Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and many of you have been asking me to do another What's on my iPhone. This would be the last day of 2025, so I thought this would be a great time to go over everything from my lock screen, home screen, different widgets I use, battery health, as well as different settings that I have as well. So you can jump to any of those in the description below with all of the chapters. Now the first thing is the lock screen. I have it set up pretty simply. We have the time here, which I've expanded, and then I have the weather here at the top, as well as the AirPods battery here, or any battery that's nearby, as well as Lumi. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. We'll press and hold, then we'll go to customize, and you can see here that I don't really have anything changed as far as settings, so I didn't really change the opacity here of liquid glass. I sort of like it frosted on the lock screen, it's easier to see. And then also on the bottom here, like I mentioned, I have a couple different widgets. So I have this one here for battery. Sometimes I've changed it out for weather, but I have battery as well as Lumi. Lumi tells me when sunrise is, or sunset, or one of the best times to take photos and videos outside. But you can see here, if I scroll down, it's actually a paid app that I've had for a long time on my watch as well. So it's the middle complication on the watch. So it's something I recommend if you haven't tried it out. So we'll go back home here. And then again, in the top, I have this widget with the weather itself. So you can see that here. So pretty simple setup on the lock screen. If we go back into the home screen here, you'll see that I have the typical layout I normally do. So let's go over all of the widgets and things. So the first thing you'll notice is the layout that I have with dark icons. You can simply change that by pressing and holding, going to edit, and then customize, and then of course changing it to dark icons. I typically leave it on this, just like you see in most of my videos, and I typically brighten the background as well. There's always that wallpaper bug I've talked about, and if I swipe up, it does desaturate a little bit, but it is getting better with future updates. So again, I have this layout here. It's basically just drag them where you want, and they stick exactly where you want. So no real issues there. Of course, you can see the widget at the top, and I get asked what this is all the time. I'll link it in the description below, but it's Mercury Weather, and it allows me to edit the widget and change the different colors. So maybe I want it to be rainy dark blue. We can switch back, give it a second, and now it's rainy dark blue. I typically like the orange widget, but of course it's fully customizable. So night purple might go better with this wallpaper, and you can see that here. So this gives you an idea of customization, but again, you can change it to whatever you want. There are some paid variances to this update for the widget itself, but you can use the basic one by itself. Now, as far as the icons that I have here, this really hasn't changed in years. We have the phone app, photos, I have a church app here or folder that you can see, Instagram, and then in social, I have all the different places that I post online to meet all of you, talk to you on X or Threads or even Blue Sky, Discord, and other places as well. Those are all linked in the description. Then, of course, Gmail. Podcasts, it's Apple Podcasts, which I found I've been using mostly as the main podcast app, and then YouTube with my YouTube Studio, YouTube, and YouTube Music. And then, of course, I have settings and camera. Of course, along the bottom, I've had this same setup for many years, where I have messages, Safari, mail, and music. Now, I've been looking for a better mail app because oftentimes I get many notifications, and then I go in, I read the mail, clear them out, delete them, and still the notification sticks on here. It's been an ongoing issue, but I've been trying other mail apps and haven't found one I really like. If we take a look at the next page before we go into settings, this is pretty typical. These are mostly utilities I use for the videos that I do, such as Geekbench. Journal I don't really use a whole lot. From time to time, maybe if I'm on a trip, maybe going to different events, then I'll maybe journal a little bit. News I should probably use more, but I've barely used it. Find My I use all the time, whether I'm looking for a different device or just trying to find out where my kids are at. That's definitely helpful. Notes I use quite a bit, passwords of course, calculator, which I typically access from the control center, and then Apple Maps I've been using more as well, so been using a lot of these things. Reminders I use, Craft is actually the notes app I use for this video, for example, and I'll show you that quickly. So if we go into Craft, the nice thing about this is it actually syncs with my Mac and iPad. So if I update it here, it updates on my screen in front of me. This is basically what I'm looking at when I'm talking to you, just to make sure that I talk about the home screen, the apps and widgets next, things like that. So pretty simple and straightforward. The home app I don't use a whole lot, but I do have a few things set up in here. You can see different things, adaptive lights now available, or that's an update. Then I have the front door with no response. I actually have a smart lock on that, so that's why that's set up. And then of course the developer app. social networking, which I have Telegram in, WhatsApp, and Ivory. I typically use WhatsApp the most here. Maybe I should move this around, but I have a Telegram channel as well. Then calendar, of course, Google, then Apple Vision Pro's app, which is just there. I have car keys here, so BMW, Porsche, and Tesla. Tesla is actually not a car key. It has to do with solar, so that's why that's still there, but I have a couple different car keys there. Then Image Playground. Most of these are just Apple apps to show in different videos. Now, the other thing other than fitness, which I've been using quite a bit more these days, but Mammotion and Ecovacs. These are actually two automated mowers. I've been using those around my house the entire year, mowing my lawn, trying out different ones, and maybe we'll talk about those in future videos. Also, we have the Watch app, Magnifier, and TV. On the next page, basically all the same sort of Apple apps, with the exception of Google Maps. So that's one that I use typically. I'll use Google Maps or Apple Maps and go back and forth, along with Google Gemini. I actually use Gemini quite a bit if I'm asking questions, trying to figure things out. And if the new Siri actually uses Gemini, that would be really nice. It could be a nice improvement, as Gemini is very helpful. The next page, again, is just mostly Apple apps here, where we have all of the new apps with Freeform. We've got the Health app, ChatGPT app, just to try out, games, preview, and others. So most of these are just for videos. They're an easy placement. And then, of course, the app library here. So I have quite a few different apps here, but really pretty basic things. I don't play a whole lot of games on my phone, so that's typically why I have it set up like this. Now, if we go back to the main screen here, let's go back over here. You can see that everything's, again, in liquid glass mode. So let's take a look at settings. So if we go into settings, we'll go back over here, and under display and brightness, you'll see that I have it in dark mode, and I typically access that from the control center, but I have it in dark mode. I like to use the clear icons typically, but I've been trying out both, but clear is what I prefer. And then also I turn off True Tone because I want the screen to be actual colors that I see that are blue. I want blue to be blue, white to be white. I don't want it to match the tint of the room and try and make it paper white. So that's something I don't really prefer. You'll see it says automatically adapt iPhone based on ambient lighting conditions to make colors appear consistent in different environments. I also turn off night shift, as again, I don't want my colors to change. I use this for video. I edit photos and things, and I really just want to see what it's actually going to look like. Then everything else, you can see my different settings here. I don't always use always on display. Sometimes I do. And if I do use always on display, it uses about 3 to 5% of the battery. So if I do use it, I typically just have it show notifications and have the always on display, but without the wallpaper. But I've been trying it to see if I could get a little bit better battery life with it off. Now that brings me over to battery settings, as I know many of you will probably want to know what I'm using there. On this phone, we're at 100% capacity with 42 cycles. I've been using it full time for a couple months now. And if we take a look at current usage, so let's look at that first. Yesterday on iOS 26.3 Beta 1, I had 4 hours and 51 minutes of screen active time, 2 hours and 53 minutes of screen idle time, and used, well, about 65% of the battery. It says 80 as I used it a little bit here, but mostly it was about 60% by the time I woke up till the time I've used it now. So it's getting better for me, much better than it's been in the past, with just a couple hours using 50%. Now, as far as my actual settings and the way I have it set up, well, if we go into charging here, you'll see I use optimized battery charging set to 100%. It recommends 95, but I really haven't found many issues with this, so I just leave it where it is. This is exactly how I have it set typically. And then under power mode, I turned off adaptive power. It didn't really seem to make much of a difference. It did tell me when it was activating, but on the 17 Pro Max, I really didn't notice much of a difference there. I prefer the overall speed, and if I need it, I'll turn it back on. I never use low power mode unless I need to get back to a charger. So if I'm in a situation where I'm very low, maybe 20% or below, I'll turn that on, make sure I get to a charger, and then turn it back off. As far as other settings, well, let's take a look in my settings under General and Background App Refresh. I have it completely off. I've tried this on and off to see if it makes much of a difference. It does seem to help with apps that need to be running in the background, if you're using a car key, for example, but for the most part, I turn it off and it really doesn't affect anything. As far as notifications, well, I do try and turn a lot of those off so that they're not lighting up the display all the time. So you can see that here. I have prioritized notifications on, and if we scroll down, it's based on per app. So you'll see here as we go down, for example, Blue Sky I have off, Authenticator I have on, a few different apps I have off, such as DJI Mimo. I don't really need that all the time. Some of them I do. For example, Facebook I have on, but different other options I have off. Depending on the app, I went through these one by one, customized them to work best for me. For example, I like Lumi, but I don't need notifications from it, so I turn that off. You'll see different ones here as well. So again, I went through and customized it all, made sure it wasn't lighting up my display. For example, with reminders, those are important, so I want that to light up my display. So that's how I have all my notifications set up. When it comes to the control center, well, you can see here it's pretty simple and straightforward. Basically, I have one page, and app settings is my favorite shortcut. So basically, if I go into music, for example, and well, Apple Music just got better. So let's go ahead and save that, maybe for a future video, but we'll go ahead and start listening. We can go back here, and within Apple Music, of course, if I want to see my settings, I can go right to this shortcut, and it will bring me right into the settings of Apple Music. This works in just about any app. So again, podcasts, app settings, run it. It brings me into podcast settings. It's a super helpful shortcut, and I'll link it in the description. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. One other thing maybe you were wondering is what ringtone I'm using. So if we go back to sounds, I typically don't change the ringtone ever, but you'll see here Reflection Dreamer. So that's typically what I use as my main ringtone. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I do use some accessibility features such as the motion update here. So when you're in the car, maybe you're riding with someone else, you're using your phone, I typically get a little bit nauseated, so I'll turn that on under accessibility. So again, here under motion, we have reduce motion, but vehicle motion cues is what I use. So this actually puts those dots on the screen that you can see here. And as you move the phone around, as it starts to move faster, they move along with it. And it does seem to help me quite a bit. It doesn't help everyone, but it's definitely something that I find very useful. So I leave it on. Now, as far as what to do in the future, I've thought about trying third-party apps, as it seems Apple's apps are decent for many things, but not all of them. For example, I tend to think that people may be working on mail 100% of the time, maybe Spark email. They love email. They're probably going to make a better app. The same is probably true with everything from camera apps to photos apps and more. So this year, I'm planning, or in 2026, I'm planning to try around different apps, see if some of the third-party apps are better options. Other than maybe maps and some things, I want to try out some other apps and see what's better. If someone's passionate about maybe making photos, their photo app could be much better, for example. The same thing is true with maps or stocks or anything else. So I'm definitely going to try those out and would love to hear from you if you've tried any out and what you would recommend. As far as the widget page, well, not a whole lot more here, just weather. I actually have a way to control lights that are nearby. You may see lights in my video, thumbnails, things like that. That's the control for it. And then this is actually a widget for my car. So I can see the fuel level. I can see what it is, of course. I can lock it, unlock it, and things like that. So all of those things are what I use typically. And then, of course, it's paired to an Apple Watch. So that's really the only Bluetooth accessories other than AirPods that I have paired to it. And, of course, the Apple Car keys I've showed before. So other than that, pretty simple layout. Definitely some simple apps. I use the gaming apps, usually on an iPad or a Mac or a Windows PC rather, for gaming. So that's why you don't see a whole lot here. Two other things, my action button here, I have it set up as the flashlight, nothing really fancy there. And camera control, the only time I use it is to open the camera. And this is a bug I talked about in a different video where it's a bluish tint. So if I go into maybe 2x, go back to 1x, now it's the correct color. White balance is way off for some reason. That's in the latest beta. But typically I have my photos set up with HEIF or HEIF to save some space at 48 megapixels. Also with video, 4K 60, and typically that's it. So 4K 60, ProRes off, it takes up a lot of space, set it at 60 frames per second. So if I want to use 60p or I can slow it down to 30 after, I can just do that. So that's typically how I have everything set up on my phone. So that's everything as far as what's on my iPhone for late 2025. If you have any layout suggestions as far as the home screen, lock screen, or apps or anything else, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.